Transmite en su canal de frecuencia modulada e estereofónica multiplex La Voz Radio, desde New Haven, Connecticut, al mundo.
Buenas tardes. Good afternoon. What a pleasure to be here with you. Juntos podemos, together we can. As always, mil gracias, William, por ese aplauso, nuestro productor querido. Y gracias a todos por escuchar de nuevo. Mi nombre es Caprice, aquí donde celebramos Juntos Podemos, co-creadores de un mundo más gentil y más justo. And what a pleasure today. I have a dear friend, I won't say old, young, and thriving, not surviving, but thriving in this world. Friend Steve Driffin. Welcome, Steve Driffin, to our show.
Thank you, Caprice. I'm glad to be here. I really am.
And the tagline is, here's where we celebrate co-creators of a kinder and more just world. And so what a pleasure to celebrate you today. I did not tell you that when you said yes to the invitation because I know you would get shy about it. But for those who are watching, you can actually see Steve Driffin blush on Facebook Live at Juntos Podemos, Together We Can. You can always catch us through La Voz Hispana de Connecticut, translated to of Connecticut. And you could actually see Steve blush. I just said that again just so that you could see the special effects.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Y si les interesa, pueden vernos en vivo también en nuestra página de Facebook, La Voz Hispana de Connecticut, donde yo acabo de tener la gran oportunidad de hacer a Steve Driffin ponerse un poquito rojo. Porque hoy vamos a celebrar todo el éxito que ha hecho. Ha desempeñado décadas trabajando para nuestra comunidad, especialmente para nuestros jóvenes, y a la misma vez lanzando un plan para sus sueños. Siempre por décadas, desde que ha estado aquí en New Haven, también ha destacado una carrera como escritor de obras de teatro. Y recién, en la última competencia de escritores en inglés se llama scripts, pero para obras, escritores de obras, ganó Steve Driffin de New Haven un gran premio de Nueva York, el número 1 de todos que fueron parte de la competición. Y esta obra se llama Mariposa. Festival, competición de escritores de teatro para la Gran Manzana. Recién fue la última competición y ya viene una para 2022, pero se llamaba la obra Mariposa. And so I know you for years, decades committed in service to families, youth and families here in New Haven. And what a privilege. And simultaneously, not letting go of your soul's greatest expression. We are all born to sing a song, I believe, that no one else can sing. A vibration, music, a sound that when we are fully in alignment with our hearts, our spirits, our mind, our whole being present on this earth, it makes a beautiful sound, and you have never let that go. Despite how crazy life gets and all of the responsibilities at work, and your songs come through loud and clear through your script writing. And what a pleasure that you are committed to serving in service of the community directly on a regular basis, but your service is is actually through your artwork, through your scripts.
Right.
So, love to hear more about what inspired you upon this path, script writing. This is something that, for young people, young and old, at heart. You could be young and old at heart because you gave up on life already. so,
Right. Right.
uh, so kept, what inspired you upon this path, and why continue, right? Because life is hard, and often we forget about the power and the importance of the art. Steve, yo sé que la vida es difícil y trabajas tiempo completo, más de 30 y 40 horas a la semana apoyando a nuestras familias y jóvenes aquí en New Haven por varias décadas, y todavía no has puesto a un lado tus sueños como escritor, y has destacado, has escrito obras, y de esa manera también estás brindando bendiciones a nuestra comunidad detrás de tu arte. ¿Qué te inspiró empezar en este camino como escritor de obras, y por qué mantener, aunque la vida te ha dado muchos desafíos, pero igual seguís en la lucha como artista? So, what inspired you, Steve?
Yeah. You know, honestly, I think I have to say from the beginning, it was just in me. And I always say now, looking back, I think I write, and I've always started writing, maybe because my ancestors who couldn't write, right, who weren't allowed to write and read, and who had stories to tell. And I think it comes through us. Sometimes we think we just do a thing, and we don't give it value, but we should really learn to value the gifts that and the talents that we have, and we shouldn't negate it and look at it as it's just something, something I do. We shouldn't do it like that. We should really respect the gifts that's given to us, because what stories did our ancestors say that one day it'll be told regardless? And we don't know that, right? But if we're able to, and I feel that's what I'm doing now. So I started as writing like in elementary school. And I remember my mother used to yell at me and yell at me for wasting paper, the little loose leaf paper, and I grew up in the projects in New York. And I remember, I always felt like, man, we can't even afford paper, and so, I just started writing, and who knew that the trajectory would just lead to where I am now. And I'm thankful. And I'm still learning. I'm still growing,
And about how many people do you know were part of the competition in New York, the Big Apple Film Festival screenplay winner?
Oh my gosh. You know what? I'm not sure of that number. But that was big. That was big for me. That was really, I wasn't expecting that. And that lets me know, and for anybody, don't quit. That's what I would say from learning of that. Don't quit, because you don't ever know who's looking for your piece, right? But I'm sure that they had New York City. So you figure every writer that's in New York City, and then every person that heard about it that's outside of New York City. And so I'm sure it wasn't 10 people. Yeah.
Yeah, because and talk about screenplays. That's the heart of screenplay, right? The mecca in the United States for screenplays, outside for film industry out in LA, California.
Yeah.
These are the two meccas in New York and
Yeah.
LA, and you were number one. That's heavy competition, and so proud. When you said your soul's work, not to let go of it, it speaks to the soul. I've seen various of your plays, and there are only two playwrights that I've ever cried at watching their plays, and it's yours and Aaron Jafaris.
Aaron's my
where
man.
where it really strikes the heart and the spirit
Yeah.
in beautiful ways, makes you stop, pause, and think about life.
Yeah.
And values in life. And so that's magic, what you do, Steve. I'm just going to translate really quickly. Steve dice de que él cree que encontró su inspiración detrás de los ancestros, que siendo un hombre afroamericano tiene ancestros en los años de la esclavitud de seres humanos, prohibían aprender a leer y escribir. Si uno sabía leer, era causa para grandes torturas. Y él dice de que les salía los cuentos y el deseo de escribir desde la primaria, y se recuerda creciendo con bajos ingresos en los proyectos de Nueva York, y su mamá le decía: deja eso, mijo, deja de gastar el papel, necesitamos ese papel. Y él agarraba un papel y lápiz y escribía sus cuentos, y la mamá lo castigaba porque no tenían suficientes fondos para tener papel para escribir. Igual seguía escribiendo, y ya en sus años más mayor de edad, él dice: uno nunca sabe quién está mirando, quién está buscando lo que uno escribió. Y yo he visto varias obras escritas por Steve, y para mí, cuando estoy mirando una obra de teatro, y en mi corazón siento la tristeza, felicidad, todas esas emociones detrás de lo que está contando en la obra, es una buena obra bien escrita. Y yo tengo 2 escritores favoritos, y resulta que son de New Haven: Steve Driffin y Aaron Jaffaris, que sí, yo puedo ir en ese camino con los escritores durante la obra, sintiendo todas las emociones y lo que se está destacando enfrente de mis ojos. En mi corazón lo siento también. Y ese es el poder de arte. Y habla a los seres humanos, y uno piensa, me encanta quiero decir, sobre mis valores, mi rumbo en la vida. Detrás de lo que yo veo en la obra, me inspira a pensar sobre la condición de la vida y la experiencia de ser humano. Y Steve era parte de una competición a nivel nacional y muchas veces internacional, basado en Nueva York. Es bien competitivo. Nueva York y Los Ángeles es donde las obras, escritores de obras, donde muchos llegan de diferentes partes del mundo para ver si pueden lanzarse, para tener una carrera, para competir en las grandes ligas, como se dice, con equipos grandes. Y Steve ganó, fue el primerísimo, ganó número 1 el año pasado en esta competición con su obra. And so, Steve, you do touch upon many of the issues impacting our communities. And I've seen some of your art taking out straight into the street in New Haven, taking over the corners where, unfortunately, people have died in those corners, crazy enough, in front of police substations. And you took it over through art, and art reflecting real life and the difficulties, low income, substance abuse, gun violence, things that affect people in our community. It's not as bad as when we grew up, but it's still there. It's still there.
Right.
And why the themes that you pick, these themes that you pick in your script writing? ¿Por qué escoges los temas? Que yo vi una obra en una esquina, en un vecindario de New Haven, donde lamentablemente muchas personas se han muerto en la vida real, y con los actores estabas allí en la calle de New Haven, con arte, y para que las personas en la comunidad puedan ver qué difícil es esta vida de bajo ingreso, abuso de sustancias, adicción y violencia. para que tengan una conversación para ver cómo podemos superar esta situación. Yo he visto el poder de arte y lo que has hecho aquí directamente en las calles de New Haven. ¿Por qué escoges estos temas? So why these themes?
Yeah. So, Caprice, things have to they have to speak to me. And I can't, I don't think I'm a writer that just write anything, but things have to move me. And one thing that I know is a common theme about what I write is really about the human spirit and how the human spirit and can overcome, how the human spirit has the ability to rise above, and that we can still change in spite of our adversities. Um, that's important to share that story. It's important to share stories from people that look like us, and to be real with it. I never want to fabricate or sensationalize anything. I just want to give a message, and that's important to me. Giving messages are important to people. Without the beauty about in writing, screenwriting, and playwriting, and well, let me just say this also. Um, I always started out wanting to be a filmmaker. Um, years and years ago, when there was no gray in my beard, I wanted to become a filmmaker. And at that time, though, filmmaking was very expensive. You needed millions of dollars. So I didn't have millions of dollars. And so what I had to learn to do was like, how can I still tell a story? And that prompted me into doing theater and doing theater on the streets. So I moved here to Connecticut, and I'm, like you said, it was a time when crack was destroying our communities by just exorbitantly. It was just, I mean, it was just incredible how that drug came in our communities and just decimated our families. And and I wanted to say something about that, right? I wanted to talk about that, but I knew I couldn't. I knew that I could not wag my finger or God on the block on the corner, talk to the drug dealer and say, you shouldn't do that. That wouldn't have worked out too well. But I wanted I wanted to tell our story. I wanted to tell a story. And so I remember my first street story was called Yo Street. And it was done. I did it right on Orchard Street, and I convinced, and I love him to this day like a father, Bishop Brooks. He believed in me. He supported my dream, and he helped me close the street off. We blocked the street off. We built a stage off of their steps of the church out into the streets, and we did this play, and it was like a morality play. And the morality play spoke about how the community was once beautiful and connected, and people looked out for each other, and the family unit was intact, and everything, and all the things that I remember growing up in Bed-Stuy, right? And then the infiltration of drugs came, and I portrayed that, and all the characters are allegorical. They were like brotherhood, commerce, somebody. So those are the characters. And then Dr. Uggs, if you put Dr. Uggs together, he moved into the neighborhood, and the neighborhood was welcoming. Our neighborhoods welcome people, right? That's how we always have been. You come in, we will welcome you. But he was insidious. He had some other plans, and he began to be the cause of the demise. And the community lost their focus. They lost their strength. They lost who they were, and they had to come to an epiphany. And so I shared that story, and that story actually went well, and people still talk about it 20 plus years later, Caprice. And so hence stage plays. Then I started doing more stage plays because I couldn't do film because I couldn't afford it. So I made lemonade out of the lemons, and continued to write stage plays.
Mm. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to translate de
Yes, I
que
know that
Steve
was a lot. I'm
dice,
sorry.
oh no, it's beautiful. Steve dice de que él empezó a escribir obras de teatro con el tema que habla con su espíritu, que tiene que mover su espíritu, tiene que ver un mensaje. Él cree que es bien importante, las artes pueden elevar el espíritu del ser humano. Él cree mucho en la transformación del ser humano. Uno puede superar el trauma de la vida o los traumas de la vida y ser una buena persona. Y quiere usar el arte para inspirar a los seres humanos. Él directamente fue impactado por la negatividad que se encuentra alrededor de las drogas, la venta de las drogas, el uso de las drogas en Nueva York. Pudo observar directamente el cambio completo de su vecindario cuando era pequeño, teniendo familias unidas, comunidades con enlaces bien fuertes, todo bien lindo. Y sus obras, su primera obra que se llamaba La calle Yo Street, él escribió sobre ese tema y de ahí de repente entra un señor que se llama el Doctor Ugg, la marca de zapatos Uggs. El Doctor Ugg entra igual con enlaces fuertes en la comunidad, brindando la bienvenida a cualquier persona extraña, y esta persona extraña tenía malas intenciones y empezó con la venta de drogas. Y quiso hacer una obra porque vio lo mismo ocurriendo aquí en New Haven cuando él se mudó a Connecticut y lanzó su primera obra, que era La calle Yo. El pastor Bishop Brooks le dio la bienvenida, le ayudó a construir un escenario afuera, mismito en la calle de Orchard, cerquita por los hospitales. And right now, Orchard Street still is a little bit risky to this day. Y él, aunque había ese riesgo, salió ahí afuera a hacer la obra para que la gente pueda ver qué es lo que está pasando en nuestros vecindarios, directamente detrás de obra de arte, ¿verdad? Y no hablar uno a uno con los que están vendiendo las drogas en ese momento aquí en New Haven, porque hubiera sido muy riesgoso decirles eso está mal directamente en sus caras, pero detrás del arte pudo dar ese mensaje. Muchas de sus obras tienen un mensaje para tratar de llamar la atención a situaciones en nuestras comunidades que sí podemos hacer mejor, pero primero hay que reconocer que hay un problema y dar inspiración para un cambio mejor. And so what I'm hearing is it's important to recognize, hey, community, we got a problem here, and simultaneously inspire that we could do better. So, what a gift, because I think not just myself and others here in the community that have seen your shows agree that it is a gift to be able to show someone on one hand the ugly, but then inspire
Right.
for greatness. And that's a gift because I never felt preached to when I watched your plays. And Posthumous was another one that went out on the street corners, as well as other heavy topics like folks who were formerly incarcerated returning back into the community and the difficulties that they face.
Yeah.
And we'll be right back. After a brief commercial break, we have about 3 more minutes before we take a break. But as always, do not turn that dial when you hear Spanish. I want to hear more about the latest play that you had a reading at Quinnipiac for. And are there any opportunities coming up, and how to follow you to be able to catch those opportunities here locally for future shows? And but I guess we do have some time on this. What is the name of the play that you were doing in Quinnipiac?
Yep. The play that I just finished writing is actually, I'm still workshopping it and figuring it out. It's entitled Death by a Thousand Cuts, a Requiem for Black and Brown Men.
Mm-hmm. And my take on this is it has a lot to do with racial aggressions and microaggressions.
Right.
And I teach a course at Gateway called The History of Peace and Conflict. And decades worth of research says more human beings have died from not direct physical violence in states of war through warfare, but through the injustices that exist when there is the absence of war. With the injustices that exist, it says we do not have positive peace. We have negative peace where there's a win and a lose. Someone's winning and others are losing.
Right.
And it causes harm. It actually does cause physical harm. It also causes mental, emotional harm. And so your play is actually an act of peace, letting people know, hey, we really do not live in a peaceful society because people are dying by 1,000 cuts, Black and brown men.
Yes.
And so to uplift that voice, those voices of Black and brown men, it's a really important insight that many would not have had if this play were not written.
Right.
So we'll be right back to hear more from Steve Driffin and Death by a Thousand Cuts, Requiem for Black and Brown Men. Ya regresamos más con Steve Driffin. Vamos a hablar un poco sobre su última obra, que todavía lo está terminando de escribir, pero recién este fin de semana hubo una audiencia en la Universidad de Quinnipiac y va a estar al punto de terminar de escribir la obra para estar en un teatro aquí local en New Haven. Y entonces no se pierda, vamos a tener más información a donde pueden ver la obra recién de Steve Driffin, que está llevando a la luz cuando ocurre momentos de agresión racial contra una persona, no más por ser una raza negra o latina. Los estudios enseñan que sí causa muerte. Más personas en este país han muerto por el racismo que estar directamente en guerras. Y los estudios de paz a nivel universitario dicen que hay más personas que mueren por causa de injusticias como racismo que directamente en guerras a nivel mundial. Y vamos a regresar con Steve Driffin después de esta breve pausa. We'll be right back.
La Voz Hispana de Connecticut, el único periódico que cubre las noticias locales de todas las ciudades del estado. Noticias que tienen que ver con el quehacer político, educativo, económico y social de la comunidad hispana de Connecticut. Los mejores articulistas y reporteros, el mejor contenido editorial. La Voz Hispana, la voz de todos, la voz del pueblo.
El uso de Internet tiene un impacto cada vez mayor en términos de energía. Algunos creen que la clave para lograr páginas más sostenibles está en la década de los 90. ¿Por qué? Te lo contamos en Tu Mundo Verde. Desde hace varios años, la posibilidad que nos da Internet de llevar una vida en la que se necesita usar menos papel ha sido una gran esperanza para los ambientalistas. Sin embargo, el uso de Internet tiene costos en términos de energía, costos que están creciendo. Se estima que Internet como un todo consume cada año más energía que el Reino Unido, la quinta economía más grande de todo el mundo. Una página web típica produce cerca de 2 gramos de dióxido de carbono cada vez que se le visita. Sin embargo, las páginas web no siempre fueron como las de hoy. ¿Recuerdas cómo eran las páginas en la década de los 90? Los diseños eran mucho más sencillos que los actuales. Algunos diseñadores creen que allí radica la clave y plantean repensar cómo se construyen las páginas, por ejemplo, simplificando su arquitectura o quitando funcionalidades de video innecesarias. Esto tendría otra ventaja: funcionarían más rápido. Una de las preguntas que queda frente a la propuesta es: ¿nos acostumbraríamos a volver a estos diseños más sencillos? Marisabel Houston, CNN, Atlanta.
Prepárense para obtener su licencia de conducir en Connecticut. Ahora en New Haven, preparamos a personas indocumentadas y documentadas. Las clases son de 8 horas obligatorias por el Departamento de Motores y Vehículos. Y estas clases incluyen drogas y alcohol y técnicas para manejar de manera segura. Estas clases también incluyen un manual para el estudio para pasar el examen escrito y 100 preguntas que posiblemente estén en el examen. ¿Por qué? Porque a nosotros nos interesa que usted pase el examen a la primera vez que lo tome. 51 de Elm Street, Suite 307, tercer piso, New Haven, Connecticut, código postal 06510. El número de teléfono 203-376-0864 o el 203-907-0361. Las clases son miércoles y jueves. Estamos certificados por el Departamento de Motores y Vehículos DMV del estado de Connecticut. Ahora es el tiempo y el momento.
WNHH 103.5, la voz hispana de Connecticut.
Thank you for being with us today, and happy Valentine's Day to all those who are listening.
yes.
May your heart be filled with love. And if anything, even though it's a little bit cold outside, catch a little sun rays. That's the love that is held for you. Feliz Día de San Valentín para todos de los que están escuchando. Yo sé que hay un poquito de frío, pero sí hay un poco de sol. Y si pueden salir un ratito a sentir ese sol en la piel de uno, porque ese es el amor que existe para cada uno de nosotros, especialmente en este día. Y estamos hoy con Steve Driffin, un escritor de obras. Él dice de que cuando era niño deseaba hacer películas, pero no tenía millonadas. En ese momento había que tener millones de dólares y decidió escribir obras porque nomás tenía limones, no tenía millones. Y con los limones hizo su limonada bien rica directamente en las calles de New Haven. Y se lanzó y ganó un premio en Nueva York. Es decir, no paren de soñar, no paren de ser inspirados a crear un mundo mejor detrás de su arte. Si uno tiene talento, él dice de que es importante reconocer y respetar que uno tiene ese talento y seguir trabajando con su talento, cualquier talento que uno tenga, porque esa manera el alma es lo que brilla. And so just reminding our listeners how beautiful you shared that if you are born with a gift, to continue using those gifts, and your soul will sing, your soul will shine through those gifts.
Yes.
And so you wrote this latest, Death by a Thousand Cuts. No sé si, William, puedes enseñar el anuncio de la obra Death by a Thousand Cuts de WhatsApp. Ahí te lo mandé por WhatsApp. Vamos a hablar un poco sobre esta obra. And so what can you share with us about this play that is still in the process of being written?
Yeah. So this play has been, I've been really working on this for like 7-8 years now. And it's been a long time coming, and it's, and timing is everything. When I was writing, when I first started this project, I was not sure how I wanted it to look or how to start it, how to begin it. I had many uh, versions of it that just didn't stick with me though. It has to speak to me, and it didn't. And so I just kept off and on writing and picking it up. And I keep a journal. I keep a journal when I write each story. So for this particular story, I had have my journal, and it's interesting because it wasn't until the pandemic struck, and we were all forced to stay in place, and then with the murders of black and brown people in this country by police brutality and everything, at least I became very angry. I was angry, and I really, it was not healthy. It was not a healthy place for me, and I wanted to retaliate. I didn't want to peacefully protest. I was angry at all my white people that I knew. I was angry at white people in general. Um, it was a lot that I was feeling, and I knew it was not good for me to harbor those feelings. And I'm not even built that way, but it was. You can't help but to be angered, right? If you have any experience, if our brothers and sisters, and we see the injustice, you cannot not be bothered by that. So the only release I had was my pad and pen. That was my catharsis, and that was the thing that helped me. And that's when this play started really formulating and taking shape. And by that, it just started to work itself out. I wanted to be it's a very vulnerable piece. It's vulnerability personified. Um, it's in layers. The play is in layers. It's done by and I use poetry. I use verse. I use hip hop, rap, uh, rhyme, I just use any type of genre in that when I wrote this. And I've never written a piece like this before, Caprice, like in this way. But it tells a story, and it goes and it's linear in its approach, and the whole thing is told in that fashion. Um, but it talks primarily of the pain that we have gone through, that men experience, that we don't talk about. It talks about the microaggressions, the the pain that historically and culturally we've been taught to suppress and not articulate. And I would dare say that this goes beyond the barbershop conversations. And every man that's listening to this knows what I'm talking about when we have the barbershop conversations. It goes deeper than that. It talks about the stuff that we don't even talk about. And 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 I wanted that narrative to be told because I wanted people to see us on stage for once, that we're not singing, we're not dancing, we're not caricatures, we're not stereotyped, we're not the enslaved, we're not in the ghetto, we're just people who had experiences, and this is who we are, and hear us.
Powerful, Steve. And truth telling. And these are truths that too often you don't talk about in mixed company. And for me, is how can we overcome what happens too often, even subconsciously? People who mean good intentions don't realize what they just did was aggressive. What they just
Right.
said hurt. What they just said puts physically at risk the well-being of a person of color, of a black man or Latino man. And too often we internalize that pain. And then we don't know why we feel so bad about getting up in the morning.
Mm, absolutely, absolutely, and
So,
we say that in the script too. There's a line in there. There's like we talk about getting up every day, and we manage to do it, but it's the difficulty.
and we could pretend it's not happening, but pretend doesn't get us up in the morning when we feel horrible about life. So what you're talking about is bringing some of these ills into the light to get cleared. We can't clean the mess if it's too dark,
Right.
right? We
Absolutely.
can't clean the mess in the darkness. It needs light. So thank you
Right.
for bringing that light in there for a black
Yeah.
man and Latino man not to have to suffer.
And I have to say that it also talks about love too and joy. So because in light
So
of what
can you
we
hold that
experience,
thought? Can
sure,
you hold
sure.
that thought around love and
Mhm.
joy? Because I'm going to translate what you just said, and it's
Yeah.
perfect. Pause right there. Que Steve nos dijo de que esta obra sobre las agresiones que los hombres negros y latinos ah, reciben de una manera cotidiana aquí en los Estados Unidos, en una sociedad bien racista, se siente como cuando uno se corta la piel, 1000 cortes en la piel para los hombres negros y latinos, y de eso causa la muerte, y de ahí viene el nombre de esta obra, una obra que le ha tomado 7, 8 años en escribir, porque es un tema bien fuerte, bien pesado, y terminó de escribirlo durante la pandemia, cuando todos tuvieron que estar aislados, y en esa misma vez todos en el país vieron directamente detrás de la tele las muertes de 2 hombres negros causado por la violencia de la policía, brutalidad de la policía con la comunidad negra, y él sintió en ese momento de aislamiento, uh, se recordó también trauma directa que él tuvo que pasar en su vida causado por personas racistas, y de ahí también viendo en la pantalla que está pasando otra vez y otra vez y otra vez en nuestras comunidades, tenía una rabia, y en esa rabia dijo de que ni tenía paciencia ni amor para ninguno de sus amigos que eran blancos. Sentía tanto enojo, y de allí empezó de nuevo a escribir esta obra que le tomó 7, 8 años, y lo terminó durante la pandemia. Y en lo que ven en la obra es hablando sobre temas que no más los hombres hablaban sobre estos temas cuando se van a cortar el pelo, al, uh, y más allá de ese tipo de conversación, cosas que nunca han dicho, sufrimiento que han tenido que pasar, nunca ha hablado con nadie sobre eso, porque muchas veces Steve reconoce que los hombres toman trauma, pesadillas en la vida en silencio. Le faltan a alguien de confianza que pueden hablar directamente, claramente, específicamente del trauma que lo que están pasando. Y esta obra, hay hombres que están hablando sobre esos temas, trayéndolo a la luz. Y la meta es también para sanación, la audiencia para ser testigos de la realidad de muchos hombres en nuestra comunidad y lo que ellos sufren hoy en día, en realidad en silencio, para poder entender un poco más, caminar en los zapatos, ponerse uno en ese sentido de ser negro, de ser latino, y todo lo que ellos tienen que pasar en vivir en una vida tan racista aquí en este país. Pero la obra también habla sobre alegría y amor. So tell us about the love and joy as well in this play.
Yeah. So I wanted to point out also, I didn't want to make it so dark, and gloomy, but I needed to talk about that reality too, right? But also, we just have a way of, in spite of what we go through, there's always, we find something to smile about. We find something that's beautiful. There's still love in spite of all what we go through. There's still love, and we find love through each other. And so I made sure I mentioned that. I mentioned how we acknowledged. I had the men in the play acknowledge how they were fragmented, and they apologized. They apologized to their women. Like, we were wrong. We were messed up. We made mistakes, but forgive us, mea culpa. That's one of the mea culpa, and they
Mea
just put it,
culpa.
mea culpa, right, and and so that is important to speak on as well. This play also, one of the things I want to say that I'm still trying to develop it. I'm still working on it, and I want it to be authentic. I really want it to be authentic in its delivery, um, and I wanted to be able to talk about, and also I wanted to be able to share that as much as we're different, we still have so much in common, and that is so important for us. If we recognize that in this world, we would half the divisions would not exist. If we recognize that it doesn't matter what you do or what you look like, but let's find out what we have in common. That's the thing. That's the bond that's the tie that binds us together, right? And I want to make sure
So
I do
beautiful.
that. I want to make sure I do that. I want to interview more Latino brothers. I want to sit down and get their perspective. And, because again, as much as I think we're similar, then there are differences. But then I want to hear, from my Latino brothers. I honestly, I wanted Latino brothers in the play. I pushed and I was like, listen, I wanted to be authentic. I really want to be true, and I want to hear about my Latino brothers' experiences. I want to find my brothers who can sit and be vulnerable with me, and that we can sit and just share. And when we share, we bridge together too at the same time.
And so, how can the Latino brothers get a hold of you? Who want to support you in this
Yeah.
vision?
They can email me. They can hit me up on Instagram. They can find me on Facebook. I'm on Facebook. They can message me, Steve Driffin on Facebook. My email is driftwriting, DRIF writing, one word, driftwriting at Gmail. They can email me, Instagram, Facebook, because it's important to me. It's
This
so
truth
important.
telling is so important. This
Right.
truth telling is so important, and sharing so that people could see the humanity that we all have. And
Exactly.
men are silenced for the most part. If they're not telling jokes, playing football or basketball, or
Right.
singing tunes that only people want them to sing, not what their story is.
Right. Right.
So you're bringing to life, to light, the stories, the humanity, the real perspective. So thank you so much, Steve. Steve dice de que da una gran invitación para la comunidad latina, los hombres latinos. Él todavía sigue cambiando, revisando, mejorando esta última obra y desea levantar la voz de los hombres latinos, porque él dice de que esta obra es basada en las cosas en común, lo que el sufrimiento, las barreras, el trauma en común que hombres latinos y afroamericanos pasan aquí en los Estados Unidos, pero igual hay diferencias y él quiere poder entender mejor las diferencias, él quiere poder levantar la voz de los hombres latinos en esta obra y se pueden comunicar directamente con él. Él habla inglés y pueden seguirlo por Instagram, m.a.d.content, como de contenido, pero en inglés. You can follow Steve Driffin at Instagram at m.a.d.content.
Mad
That's the
content.
Instagram handle.
Mad
Mad
content.
content. Mm-hmm. Ah, y también van a poder ver esta obra aquí en New Haven. And so when you do this play and you need support with the translation, let me know. Simultaneous translation for the play. We could hook you up. We could try to make something work, Steve.
Yeah.
And we have 2 more minutes.
Mhm.
There's so much to cover. You're so gifted. Where can we watch or catch Butterfly, the
Ah,
your prize?
I'm actually I'm holding butterflies for a very specific reason, and I'll share a little later. But I'm holding it. It's a screenplay, and it's an animation that I wrote. So it's my first animated screenplay that I ever wrote. And again, and I want to be known as a writer, right? You know, I want to be known as a writer that writes different things. So I want to write about the streets, and I want to write about butterflies, right? You know, so I want that uh, to be my stretch as a writer. But butterflies, I really want to do that in the next year or so. I also want to do a strong gospel piece. I want to do something for the religious communities, the churches, and so there's I got ideas. You know, I got a lot of ideas for these.
Beautiful. So we will follow you. Que la La obra escrito por Steve, que ganó el premio en La Gran Manzana, se llama Mariposas y va a hacer algo con eso, va a lanzarlo al público ah, en, en un año. Entonces van a poder ver en su página de Facebook también, Steve Driffin, lo pueden seguir ahí, porque tiene muchos planes, muchas cosas que está trabajando y lo va a lanzar para el beneficio de nuestra comunidad, hablando sobre temas importantes, enseñando la humanidad que tenemos más allá de las diferencias, tenemos muchas cosas en común y las obras están hablando de asuntos de nuestras comunidades que podemos y debemos de superar, y está también pensando en escribir un musical tomando música religiosa de las iglesias afroamericanas que se llama gospel. Eso es otro, uh, un estilo diferente que va a navegar y explorar ese nuevo estilo también de sus obras. Y con eso tal vez lo van a ver en el vecindario también, trabajando con nuestros jóvenes. And so, Steve, thank you so much for your time today. I know you're really busy, and our audience might find you helping out in the community as you always do. Not
Yes.
only are you elevating the human spirit through your work, but you're also doing that through your artwork, but also doing that through the nonprofit work that you do every day.
I try to
And
do my best. I try
I,
to do
I,
my best.
yeah, and you have 2 young aspiring professionals at home as well, and
Yeah.
one of them got the artist bug, I hear.
And she's an incredible actress. She's working on a show in Newtown now. She's doing stuff now. She's doing stuff.
Oh
Yeah,
wow. And
yeah,
your daughter's name that we should follow also as in the arts?
yeah. Kendall Driffin. You'll hear more of her. Kendall Driffin. She's a great actress, and she's up and coming, and she's pushing and plowing. So we're gonna do it together, father and daughter.
It's beautiful. Y también ya empezó a trabajar directamente con una de sus 2 hijas, que es una actriz y está también escribiendo obras, y ahorita está trabajando en una obra en Newton, aquí en Connecticut. Pues un gran placer estar aquí con Steve Driffin, y por favor mantenernos al día cuando hay una obra. And so thank you for being with us today.
Thank
Please
you.
keep us up to speed when and where we can catch one of your plays for the public. We'll share it on our show, Juntos Podemos, Together We Can.
Yes.
And we are so lucky to have you here in New Haven.
Thank
So
you,
have a
Caprice.
beautiful, beautiful rest of the day
You
to
too.
all who are listening.
Thank you. You too. Be
Bendiciones a
well.
todos.
Okay. Have a good day. Thank you.
You too.